Good morning. Thank you for joining me this day. This morning, we'll be in Genesis chapter 5, verse 1 through chapter 7, verse 24. This is the record of the family line of Adam. When God created humankind, he made them in the likeness of God. He created them, male and female. When they were created, he blessed them and named them humankind. When Adam had lived 130 years, he fathered a son in his own likeness, according to his image, and he named him Seth. The length of time Adam lived after he became the father of Seth was 800 years. During this time, he had other sons and daughters. The entire lifetime of Adam was 930 years, and then he died. When Seth had lived 105 years, he became the father of Enosh. Seth lived 807 years after he became the father of Enosh, and he had other sons and daughters. The entire lifetime of Seth was 912 years, and then he died. When Enosh had lived 90 years, he became the father of Kenan. Kenan lived 815 years after he became the father of Kenan, and he died, and he had other sons and daughters. The entire lifetime of Enosh was 905 years, and then he died. When Kenan had lived 70 years, he became the father of Mahalalel. Kenan lived 840 years after he became the father of Mahalalel, and he had other sons and daughters. The entire lifetime of Kenan was 910 years, and then he died. When Mahalalel had lived 65 years, he became the father of Jared. Mahalalel lived 830 years after he became the father of Jared, and he had other sons and daughters. The entire lifetime of Mahalalel was 895 years, and then he died. When Jared had lived 162 years, he became the father of Enoch. Jared lived 800 years after he became the father of Enoch, and he had other sons and daughters. The entire lifetime of Jared was 962 years, and then he died. When Enoch had lived 65 years, he became the father of Methuselah. After he became the father of Methuselah, Enoch walked with God for 300 years, and he had other sons and daughters. The entire lifetime of Enoch was 365 years. Enoch walked with God, and then he disappeared because God took him away. When Methuselah had lived 187 years, he became the father of Lamech. Methuselah lived 782 years after he became the father of Lamech, and he had other sons and daughters. The entire lifetime of Methuselah was 969 years, and then he died. When Lamech had lived 182 years, he had a son. He named him Noah, saying, "This one will bring us comfort from our labor and from the painful toil of our hands, because of the ground that the Lord has cursed." Lamech lived 595 years after he became the father of Noah, and he had other sons and daughters. The entire lifetime of Lamech was 777 years, and then he died. After Noah was 500 years, he became the father of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. When humankind began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of humankind were beautiful. Thus they took wives for themselves from any they chose. So the Lord said, "My spirit will not remain in humankind indefinitely, since they are mortal. They will remain for 120 more years." The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also after this, when the sons of God were having sexual relations with the daughters of humankind, who gave birth to their children. They were the mighty heroes of old, the famous men. But the Lord saw that the wickedness of humankind had become great on the earth. Every inclination of the thoughts of their minds was only evil all the time. The Lord regretted that he had made humankind on the earth, and he was highly offended. So the Lord said, "I will wipe humankind, whom I have created from the face of the earth, everything from humankind to animals, including creatures that move on the ground and birds of the air, for I regret that I have made them." But Noah found favor in the sight of the Lord. This is the account of Noah. Noah was a godly man. He was blameless among his contemporaries. He walked with God. Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The earth was ruined in the sight of God. The earth was filled with violence. God saw the earth, and indeed it was ruined, for all living creatures on the earth were sinful. So God said to Noah, "I have decided that all living creatures must die, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. Now I am about to destroy them in the earth. Make for yourself an ark of cypress wood. Make rooms in the ark and cover it with pitch inside and out. This is how you should make it. The ark is to be 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 45 feet high. Make a roof for the ark and finish it, leaving 18 inches from the top. Put a door in the side of the ark, and make lower, middle, and upper decks. I am about to bring floodwaters on the earth to destroy from under the sky all the living creatures that have the breath of life in them. Everything that is on the earth will die. But I will confirm my covenant with you. You will enter the ark, you, your sons, your wife, and your sons' wives with you. You must bring into the ark 2 of every kind of living creature from all flesh, male and female, to keep them alive with you. Of the birds after their kinds, and of the cattle after their kinds, and of every creeping thing of the ground after its kind. 2 of every kind will come to you, so you can keep them alive. And you must take for yourself every kind of food that is eaten, and gather it together. It will be food for you and for them. And Noah did all that God commanded him. He did indeed. The Lord said to Noah, "Come into the ark, you and all your household, for I consider you godly among this generation. You must take with you 7 of every kind of clean animal, the male and its mate, 2 of every kind of unclean animal, the male and its mate, and also 7 of every kind of bird in the sky, male and female, to preserve their offspring on the face of the earth. For in 7 days I will cause it to rain on the earth, for 40 days and 40 nights, and I will wipe from the face of the ground every living thing that I have made." And Noah did all that the Lord commanded him. Noah was 600 years old when the flood waters engulfed the earth. Noah entered the ark along with his sons, his wife, and his sons' wives because of the flood waters. Pairs of clean animals, of unclean animals, of birds, and of everything that creeps along the ground, male and female, came into the ark to Noah, just as God had commanded him. And after 7 days, the flood waters engulfed the earth. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, on the 17th day of the month, on that day, all the fountains of the great deep burst open, and the floodgates of the heavens were opened. And the rain fell on the earth 40 days and 40 nights. On that very day Noah entered the ark, accompanied by his sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, along with his wife and his sons' 3 wives. They entered along with every living creature after its kind, every animal after its kind, every creeping thing that creeps on the earth after its kind, and every bird after its kind, everything with wings. Pairs of all creatures that have the breath of life came into the ark to Noah. Those that entered were male and female, just as God commanded him. Then the Lord shut him in. The flood engulfed the earth for 40 days. As the waters increased, they lifted the ark and raised it above the earth. The waters completely overwhelmed the earth, and the ark floated on the surface of the waters. The waters completely inundated the earth, so that even all the high mountains under the entire sky were covered. The waters rose more than 20 feet above the mountains, and all living things that moved on the earth died, including the birds, domestic animals, wild animals, all the creatures that swarm over the earth, and all humankind. Everything on dry land that had the breath of life in its nostrils died. So the Lord destroyed every living thing that was on the surface of the ground, including people, animals, creatures that creep along the ground, and birds of the sky. They were wiped off the earth. Only Noah and those who were with him in the ark survived. The waters prevailed over the earth for 150 days. So, just because it's interesting here. So, Lamech lived 182 years, and he had a son named Noah. And then when Noah was 600 years old, the floodwaters came down. So that would have made Lamech 782. Oh, yes. So Lamech died 5 years prior to the flood then. But yeah, you have here the genealogies that follow Adam, going down to Noah, including Enoch, which is always an interesting one because rather than the formula of the rest of them, where um, they lived for so long, had a son, and then lived for so much longer, and then died. You have Enoch here in 521. When Enoch had lived 65 years, he became the father of Methuselah. After he became the father of Methuselah, Enoch walked with God for 300 years, and he had other sons and daughters. And the entire lifetime of Enoch was 365 years. Enoch walked with God, and then he disappeared because God took him away. Yeah, so the way in which Enoch lived was described as walking with God. Which not even Adam prior to this was said to walk with God. From Guzik here. One can arrange the following genealogies in a sequential manner and chart out a timeline. However, one cannot establish an absolutely reliable timeline with this method, because biblical genealogies are not always complete. Sometimes generations are skipped over. If one takes the genealogies as being without omission, the time of Adam comes to be some 4,000 to 5,000 years before Jesus Christ. Even with omissions, it's hard to imagine that the time of Adam was significantly more than perhaps 10,000 years before Jesus. This puts the biblical record at incredible variance with the findings and assertions of modern science. Yet there are good reasons to believe God created the earth with apparent age built into it, even as Adam and the trees of Eden had apparent age built into them. Yeah. You have Adam and Eve coming out with, being created with age, that is, in their adulthood, despite not having lived before that time. We are also confronted with the problem of extremely long lifespans. In this chapter, no one lived less than 365 years, and this was Enoch, who was a special case. Methuselah lived a total of 969 years. Several explanations of these long lifespans have been offered. Some have thought the ages are figurative, or they count months as years, yet on this basis it would mean that Enoch fathered Methuselah when he was 5½ years old. It is more likely that people did live much longer in the era before the flood. This is because the degenerative effects of the fall on the human gene pool had not yet accumulated greatly, and because the environment in the pre-flood world was so different, with a blanket of water vapors surrounding the earth. In the post-flood world, lifespans quickly came down to the lifespans we are familiar with today. During this era, the world would be populated quickly. One writer has estimated that if Adam, during his lifetime, saw only half the children he could have fathered grow up, and only half of those got married, and if only half of those who got married had children, then even at these conservative rates, Adam would have seen more than 1 million of his own descendants. Using these calculations, we can say that by the time of the flood, there could have been 7 billion people on the earth. Genealogies can be very instructive. They speak to us of both the absolutely historical character of the scriptures and are a powerful testimony to the end of every person on this earth. So Enoch, the son of Jared, was carried away to God in a miraculous way. Walked with God speaks of a true, deep relationship. Walking with God means walking by faith. walking in the light, and walking in agreement with God. After walking like this with God, it was as if one day God told Enoch, "You don't need to walk home. Why don't you just come home with me?" God took him, a very remarkable expression. Perhaps he did it in some visible manner. I should not wonder. Perhaps the whole of the patriarchs saw him depart even as the apostles were present when our Lord was taken up. However that may be, there was some special rapture, some distinct taking up of this choice one to the throne of the Most High. Hebrews 11:5 tells us the foundation of Enoch's walk with God. By faith Enoch was taken away so that he did not see death, and was not found because God had taken him. For before he was taken, he had this testimony, that he pleased God. You can't walk with God or please God apart from faith. It seems Enoch began to walk with God in a special way after the birth of Methuselah. The name Methuselah means, when he is dead, it shall come. At the birth of Methuselah, Enoch had a special awareness from God that judgment was coming, and this was one of the things that got him closer in his walk with God. So all the days of Methuselah were 969 years, and he died. Methuselah's long life was no accident. It was because of the grace of God. When Methuselah died, the flood came. God kept him alive longer than anybody to give people as long as possible to repent. Lamech lived 182 years and had a son, and he called his name Noah. If these genealogies are consecutive, Noah was born only 14 years after the death of Seth, Adam's son. Seth died in year 1042 from creation, and Noah was born in year 1056 from creation, if the genealogies are consecutive and without gaps. It is remarkable to think that Noah could have known and spoken with Adam's grandson Enosh and his other grandchildren. Since Adam and Eve had sons and daughters after Cain, Abel, and Seth, it is possible or even likely that Noah spoke with one of the unnamed sons or daughters of Adam and Eve. And he died. The overwhelming emphasis of Genesis 5 is that all these men died. They were all under sin and all subject to death. Some of them, many of them, were great men, but none of them was the deliverer God had promised. And then the judgment here, where you have the whole earth filled with violence. And the sons of God saw the daughters of men. Many have believed the sons of God were those from the line of Seth, and the daughters of men were from the line of Cain. And this describes an intermarriage between the godly and the ungodly, something God specifically prohibits. But this approach leaves many unanswered questions. Why did this make God angry enough to wipe out almost all the earth's population? Why was there something unusual about the offspring of these unions? The idea that these were believers marrying unbelievers doesn't seem to fit the record of the text. It is more accurate to see the sons of God as either demons, angels in rebellion against God, or uniquely demon-possessed men, and the daughters of men as human women. The phrase sons of God clearly refers to angelic creatures when it is used the 3 other times in the Old Testament. Jude 6 tells us of the angels who did not keep their proper domain, but left their own habitation. Jude goes on to tell us they sinned in a similar manner to these, having given themselves over to sexual immorality and gone after strange flesh. Here in Genesis 6 says, in Sodom and Gomorrah there was an unnatural sexual union. From the book of 1 Enoch, which is not inspired scripture, but many still contain some accurate accounts. And it came to pass that the children of men had multiplied, that in those days were born unto them beautiful and comely daughters. And the angels, the children of heaven, saw and lusted after them. and said to one another, Come, let us choose us wives from among the children of men, and beget us children. They took unto themselves wives, and each chose for himself one. And they began to go unto them, and to defile themselves with them. And they taught them charms and enchantments. And they became pregnant, and they bare great giants. And there arose much godlessness, and they committed fornication, and they were led astray, and became corrupt in all their ways. My spirit shall not strive with man forever, yet his days will be 120 years. This is not the outside lifespan of man, but the time left until the judgment of the flood. The flood happened 120 years after this announcement. And then you have Noah, and God telling Noah that he's going to come and destroy the earth with a flood. So he tells him to build an ark. And Noah did make it. He shall make it, and Noah did make it. Beyond the Bible, there is rich historical evidence for the reality of Noah's Ark. In 275 BC, Berosus, a Babylonian historian, wrote, But of this ship that grounded in Armenia, some part still remains in the mountains, and some get pitch from the ship by scraping it off. Around AD 75, Josephus said the locals collected relics from the ark and showed them off to this very day. He also said all the ancient historians he knew of wrote about the ark. In AD 180, Theophilus of Antioch wrote, The remains of the ark are to this day to be seen in the mountains. In 1876, the distinguished British statesman and author Viscount James Bryce claimed Ararat and reported finding a 4-foot-long piece of hand-tooled timber at an altitude of more than 13,000 feet. Yeah, and several others there as well. But I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall go into the ark. Despite the dramatic judgment coming, God will make a covenant with Noah, and he and his family will be saved. God will also use Noah to save a remnant of each animal, so the earth could be populated with people and animals after the flood. Thus Noah did. According to all that commanded him, so he did. The Bible presents Noah as a great hero of God. He was an outstanding example of righteousness, a preacher of righteousness, and Noah condemned the world by offering salvation in the ark that the whole world rejected. Noah was a preacher of righteousness, yet in his 120-year ministry it seemed that no one was saved. The work of building the ark was laborious, costly, tedious, dangerous, and seemingly foolish and ridiculous, especially when all things continued in the same posture and safety for so many scores of years together, whereby Noah, without doubt, was all that while the song of drunkards, and the sport of the wits of that age. So it is not strange that this is mentioned as a heroic act of faith. You shall take with you. Some wonder how the animals came to Noah or how Noah got them. In Genesis 6:20, God said the animals would come to Noah by migration. In some animals, God has created a migratory instinct, which can operate in an amazing manner. It is no difficulty for him to miraculously place an urge to migrate to the ark in each pair of animals he planned to be preserved in the ark. The waters prevailed and greatly increased on the earth. The description of the flood in this passage is so complete and specific that it is impossible to reconcile a local flood with a biblical record. Despite the claims of some, this is the description of a global deluge. If this were not a global flood, then the ark itself would be unnecessary. If this were only a local flood, then God's promise to never again bring such a flood is false. If this were only a local flood, the Bible is wrong when it traces all of humanity back to Noah's sons and other passages that speak of a universal flood. Literally hundreds of people, groups, have their own accounts and legends of the flood. One of the most remarkable is the Babylonian account, which is similar to the Genesis account in many ways, and is clearly drawn from it. Since all mankind came from Noah's sons, all mankind remembers the flood. Of the more than 200 cultures that have their own account of the flood, the following aspects of the story are common. 88% describe a favored family, 70% attribute survival to a boat, 95% say the sole cause of the catastrophe is a flood, 66% say that the disaster is due to man's wickedness, 67% record that animals are also saved, 57% describe that the survivors end up on a mountain. Many of the accounts also specifically mention birds being sent out, a rainbow, and 8 persons being saved. All in whose nostrils was the breath of the Spirit of life, all that was on the dry land died. In the Scopes monkey trial in America in 1925, Clarence Darrow humiliated William Jennings Bryan by asking him if he believed every word in the Bible. When Bryan said he did, Darrow asked him how the fish drowned in the flood. Bryan didn't know the answer, gave a long and confused speech, and died the next day. If only he would have known the Bible better, he would have known it says this about the breath of the Spirit of life. The fish did not die in the flood, only animals with a breath of life in them died, the animals on dry land. God did just as he said. Virtually all of Noah's contemporaries did not believe God would do just as he said. Though it took 120 years, God demonstrated that he keeps his promises and is totally faithful. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining me today. Hope you have a great day. Bye.